Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. This is OpenIT's webinar entitled Transforming OpenIT Raw Usage Data into Actionable Insights. My name is May, and I will be your host for today. Together, let's learn to create reports and dashboards to monitor and analyze your software license usage, such as admin reports for overall software license consumption, compliance and
This
cost,
meeting is being recorded.
manager reports for team performance and budget comparison, and product management reports for portfolio consumption and usage patterns. Before we get started, let me encourage everyone to ask questions. Just drop them in the chat box and our speaker will address them during the Q&A session. If we don't have the opportunity to answer all the questions, or if there are any questions that need further investigation, rest assured that we will send them to Linda and we will reach out via email or through LinkedIn to answer those inquiries. Our presenter has been an industry speaker since 2014. Based in Houston, she is a high-energy senior-level consultant with more than 35 years of diversified experience in the technology industry. She is a proven leader with a unique blend of responsibilities in small and large companies with a passion for building successful businesses. Currently, she's helping clients solve their business issues around software licensing. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Linda Cole.
Thank you, May. I appreciate that introduction and welcome everybody. We're glad to have everybody here today, and we're just going to jump right in. So as May said, the goal of today is to kind of show you various different ways that you can, use usage data, specifically our examples around OpenIT, but how you can use your usage data to help your organizations attain a more optimized position, but all the different ways that you can view the data, because what we see now is different people in the organizations need to consume the data. They might want to consume it differently, but they want to look at different things. So we don't want folks to have to run ad hoc reports all the time, et cetera. So I'm going to start with just a more high-level, generic, if you will, enterprise view dashboard. And let me just quickly. So here we can see a lot of different visuals. And so this is great for license administrators, department managers, things of that nature, where you can see, a list of everything you have in the environment, but you can easily and quickly drill down into that. So let's say we want to look at, a specific vendor and we have multiple servers here. So what you'll see is all of the visuals change. So it allows you to look at, again, specific vendors. We can drill into a specific server. We can look at, it's giving us a holistic view of everything that's going on with that particular vendor. So whether we're having issues with licenses or we're trying to prepare for a vendor negotiation, et cetera, we can see a usage trend. Now, the benefits of Power BI, for those of you who don't use it, it really provides, again, individual visualizations, but it also has these tool tips, if you will. So you can just hover over various different information. So here we can see that we had 2 denials on this particular day, May 20th, and we can actually see exactly who had those denials, the same down here on our denial weekly heat map. So again, as you pick and drill down into various different things, these will change. All of the visuals will change. So you can see it's a very powerful way to have a high-level overview, to see what your usage looks like. We can see here, for example, that we have users that are camped, we call it camping, camped on a license over the weekend plus after hours. So that kind of gives you an idea that, hey, we can optimize these licenses more if we can identify those users that are camping on a license, kind of educate them. Hey, if you're not going to be using it, go ahead and check that license back in, distinct user, license efficiency, et cetera. But you can also, that's our high level, but you can also go all the way down to the user level. So here we can see a list of all the different users on the applications. And let me just pick a couple here to to compare and contrast. So here I'm going to pick Stephen Sharp. Now we can see this is exactly how many licenses they're using. We have the days of the month and the hours of the day. And so we can see that really it's pretty much nonstop. So there's a couple of areas where, they might check a license in, but not very often, right? And then there's a lot of different multiple licenses used simultaneously. So maybe that's a job being run that makes sense. But this particular user, I would say, needs some education on how to be a good steward of those licenses. When we talk to our customers and work with them and their end users, most of them don't realize the financial impact in the organization of what's going on when they do this kind of behavior. And we can contrast that here with, let's say, Olympia, where you can see if there's no if the dates are not there, she had no usage that day. So even though she might use multiple licenses again for these jobs that are running, you can see that she's not camped on the license. She's, um, a good steward of that license, if that makes sense, right? So all different ways to look at the information. And this again is just one. I'm going to show various different examples today. And you can also drill all the way down and look at denials. There's not many here, but you can see exactly who had those denials and exactly when those denials occurred. So again, a lot of different information that you can put to the various different consumers in your organization. That could be vendor management, it could be license administrators, it could be department managers, etc. So I'm going to be showing you a few different examples today of all the different types of data you can do and various different types of visualizations. So the next one I'm going to show you is a consumption dashboard. And so here, again, think of it, this particular one is consumption, but I'm going to tell you some different ways you can use these data types, this type of information. On this high level summary page, we can see how many users do we have currently connected? What's our current spend? What's our prior spend? So in this particular one, we can see that the spending is going up pretty significantly. So what has changed in the environment that's driving this? Typically on a consumption base, you have, you pick whether it's tokens or dollars or what have you, however that vendor happens to be, there still is a dollar amount that you've committed to. So when we see this type of activity, that's going to say, hey, we're probably going to run out. And again, when you have these consumption based, when you go over what you committed to, the price typically changes and it goes much higher. So you want to be able to have a quick visual as to what's going on. You want to be able to see what applications are costing the most money. And in this particular one, it's great because we can also look at, these are the various different spends by regions or by countries. So we can see India, EU, US are the top three. But what's great about Power BI, not just being able to get the data, but is being able to quickly look into those. So here, I think it's interesting, right, that in this, the largest consumer is India, but they're only using the like project-wise engineering. Whereas if we contrast that with the US, they're using auto plant. They're not even using project-wise. So this is nice for, again, you're trying to see where's my usage coming from. Now in this particular example, this is a consumption based, but imagine we had the same thing for a different vendor that was not consumption based. So you might say, okay, and I'm going to show you another version of simulation, but if you have a global server, does it make sense? For example, in this scenario, if my usage is not consistent, so I'm not doing, rest of world or all around the world, right? So if I'm looking at a global agreement with all of these different features, the cost per license is much more expensive than if we had regional. Well, when you have this type of activity where it's very concentrated in a region, then it makes more sense. It's more cost effective. So you can do these what if scenarios for you to say, hey, it's cheaper for us for this particular region to just have a regional agreement, if that, right? So versus the various different other ones. So again, back to consumption based, let's go to, we can also look at some other information about the daily application use. So here we have the applications that are being used, of course, what region they're in, etc. But it's also interesting to look at what that peak usage is so we can see these trends. Again, we can pick it by the individual region or country. These are country codes in this particular case, but you can also sort it. So you can say, what is the least used product or what doesn't have any usage at all? So in a consumption based, you're not paying for this, but if this was a different type of licensing, this would be an example where you could say, well, why I have licenses for these various different applications when we have no usage across whatever time frame we're picking. So again, a lot of different benefits to that. And then you can go all the way down to the user level. So depending upon what position you have in your organization, we have that enterprise view, we have those region, department views. You can do it by project, etc. But you can also go all the way down to the user level. In this particular example, we do have the users anonymized. So it's up to you. Some companies use anonymized data and some don't, especially over in Europe with GDPR. They'll use they won't have the username, but you can do it either way. The other thing, so we can sort here, this particular dashboard, we're actually pointing out, we're saying, hey, you have these users, right? And they're camping on these various different licenses. So it'll also, with Power BI and usage data, you can not only report on the data, but you could do some analytics as well. So that you don't even have to try to comb through all the data. You can quickly go through and look and see what's going on. And again, you can do it by user, you can do it by usage, but you can quickly see where you need to potentially do some training or do some other different activities. Now, here's another consumption-based version where we're looking at the overall consumption. In this particular one, not only are we showing the spend, but we're showing it in relation to what the bucket is. In other words, how much was that contract value and what's our performance against that contract value. You can see, again, we still have this is a year over year comparison. There's daily trends. So there's all types of information. What's the top 10 applications that we're using? How many unique users? I mean, all kinds of information can be displayed from your usage data. In this particular case, it's License Analyzer. But we can also go and drill down into that even further to look at various different applications. And again, click on those to see what you'll see. Everything changes on here. So it's a very powerful way, again, to look at what's going on. Now, the other thing that's very important to be able to do when you're going into these vendor negotiations is to be able to say, what if? So in this particular example, there's some vendors who will allow you to have a filter on your contract. What that means is if a user opens an application and closes it in a 5, 10, 15-minute period of time, then they don't count that as usage. So you can see that's very important in a consumption-based model, right? Because if somebody accidentally opens an application and closes it, you don't want to be charged for the whole day. So you can do what if scenarios. This particular one has a 15-minute filter. So what would the financial impact be if you were able to negotiate a 15-minute filter based upon your usage? In this particular example, it's a little, almost $250,000 savings by doing this one negotiation with that particular vendor. The other things you can do what if scenarios on are if the vendor is changing license types, for example. So they're going from a concurrent to a named user, things of that nature. So it's very important to be able to have all of this usage information so you can see the impact of the organization. You can look at daily consumption usage as well in this particular example with Bentley, but I want to go here to the app usage details. So this is a quick way for you can see we've got, it's ranked here by tokens, but in this tabular form here below, we can see what, let's say you want to say, what's the most expensive license in my portfolio? So we can just sort this and we can say, oh, It's the Moses Enterprise. It's $80,000, right? That's the most expensive license we have. But we know that SAIC is the most spend. So if we're looking at, if we sort by token, um, that's the most expensive spend that we have in the portfolio. But what particular feature is used the most time, right? So we can simply click here on elapsed time. So this is a very easy way to have all of the data at your fingertips, but be able to, again, whatever way you need to look at the data or whatever use case you have going in to your that's bringing you into this dashboard, that you can look at those various different things. I want to show you one more dashboard here. And this particular one is the Autodesk named user subscription. So a lot of you have converted over to this from the concurrent licensing. If you haven't and you have usage data, we can actually tell you, right? We can do the analysis to say, here's what I need when I do that conversion, not just take what you have and get the 2x that they offer, but what am I going to need? Once you've done that, you need to understand what's going on in the environment. So if I jump over here, I'm going to just jump over here to subscription real quick. We can see, for example, with AEC, we own 546 licenses. But if we look over here at the distinct user count during this time frame, we can see we've had 717 different users. Now, the reason is this particular customer, their data, they're trying to tweak it, right? They're trying to optimize their position to see what's going on. And for those of you who don't know, this is a collection. What that means is you get a collection of applications when you purchase this particular license. It's, the short term is AEC, but there's a lot of different applications, and it's important to know what applications are in that. But if you use 2 or more, then it makes sense, for example, to buy a collection. So here you can see inside your environment exactly which applications or features inside of this collection that you're using from a distinct user account. Over here, it's important to be able to see when was the last time somebody used it. Because, so we can see here, I've sorted it by day since last used. Oh, sorry, this one isn't. This one's by user. But here you can sort by day since last used. It doesn't make any sense for you to have an assignment for these end users to have assigned licenses when they're no longer using it. So you can look and see how much they're using it, etc. So this is a quick way, the same way we pointed out in the other dashboard. Hey, these users are camped on a license on a regular basis. Same thing here. These users should be unassigned so that that license goes back into the pool and it can be utilized by other people. So we have cost avoidance. I'm going to jump over here to user. And again, if they use 2 or more, so we can see the users here. If they use 2 or more licenses, it makes sense. We can see this is a heat map, if you will, of their usage. But you need to be able to drill down into this to see, of the AEC, are they using more than one feature? So this particular user, they're using AutoCAD and the cloud modules and Revit on a fairly regular basis. So this makes sense for this assignment. But if we contrast that with this next user, they have only a little teeny bit of usage on AutoCAD. They're really mainly a Civil 3D user. So it's more cost effective for you to have a single license for Civil 3D and use Flex tokens for AutoCAD, for example. And then we have one more example here where, again, they're mainly a Civil 3D user. They had at 1.1 some small usage here. So being able to visualize this data so you can understand who needs what type of assignments to optimize that is important. You can also look at it holistically in terms of if you want to see what your top users are, if you want to look at particular features. And again, this is an Autodesk example, but this applies to any vendor. It depends on your license entitlements as to what type of data that you want to look at and what makes sense. And then, of course, being able to just have everything in one view so that you can see how many do I own, how many are assigned in this particular example, and what the contract values are, etc. And you can actually see the assignments here as well. So being able to see everything you have in one. So that is, I've got one more I want to show you really quickly. And I talked about those what if scenarios. And in this particular example, I had mentioned, right, these are individual regional servers. I think there's like 11 here. And this is the stacked usage. So what most folks did is, you take that usage and you stack it up and you say, well, here's the price of a regional license versus here's the price of a global WAN license. And does it make sense? Well, if you stack up this usage, that's not really your true global concurrency. So here we can see these licenses are not optimized because this is adding up all the licenses you have for all of the different regions. And we can see the stacked usage. We don't even get up to that point, but this red line is the global concurrency. So for those of you who have users spread across multiple regions, or especially across the world, it might make more sense, but you need to be able to have that global concurrency and understand what's going on so you can do the financial impact of that. So that's a lot of different a lot of different data in a very short period of time, but hopefully I was able to show you a lot of different examples of not only the data but different ways to visualize that and the power of Power BI in terms of looking at all that type of data. So I'm going to turn it back over to May so we can ask questions.
Thank you, Linda, for your very insightful presentation. Well, we've got a few questions here from our attendees, and if you're
Great.
all set for the question and answer, I'll throw you the first question now. How
Okay.
often is the data you've shown updated?
Oh, that's a great question. So, and I'm sorry I didn't talk about that. So in these Power BIs, these are all have a live connection to the database. At OpenIT and License Analyzer, we use the Microsoft SQL and Microsoft Analysis servers. So those, it's commonly referred to as a cube. It's three-dimensional data, so think of it as pre-aggregated data. But these are live connections. So if you're the one managing, your usage tool, you're not having to sit there and do ad hoc reporting. These are live connections directly to the database. So it has all the information. So again, I'm sure you've all seen this where they go, oh, so you have somebody says, I need a report that has this vendor from this time frame with this thing, and you send it to them, takes work, right? You have to run the report, you send it to them, and they come back and they say, oh, can I just change the date on that? So being able to have a live connection to the cube really empowers the way you can do it. And this is a Power BI example. You can do the same thing with other BI tools, a Tableau, a Spotfire. You can actually attach Excel to it and let them. So again, it's live data.
All right, thank you very much. Question number 2, Linda, can you limit the data users see?
Yes. And actually that's a very common question. So I'm assuming the use case is you have somebody that, let's say you have license administrators and they only manage a certain number of vendors in the out of the, all the vendors that you have. Yes, you can filter the data so that certain people only see certain data. That example or that use case with a license administrator might be at the vendor level. You might have, we have different, it's really changed. Many more people in the organization are consuming this type of data, and especially folks who didn't have a solution before that are coming on to a new solution. So a department manager wants to see what's going on. We showed that user all the way down to the user. So you can filter it by region or by user, or you can filter it by vendor. So, the answer is yes. You can control who sees what, and you can control it by various different attributes in the data.
Thank you very much. And before we ask the third question, we are encouraging everyone to use the Q&A button for your question. So number three, how are you getting the information on Autodesk for the named user subscription?
Okay, so on Autodesk, that is easy. We have an API into the Autodesk portal, so we combine this data with the metering data, if you will. And so the information I showed you, we're utilizing an API directly into the Autodesk portal where the license are, that's where you purchase them, assign them, etc. So we're able to tap directly into that. It's a great question because everybody, all the vendors are changing now. And so they're different. We used to be able to just have one answer. We just meter that with a data collector, but it really varies across all the different vendors, and not only just at the vendor level, but now vendors have multiple license types within the portfolio. So you might have various different ways that we're pulling that data, various different ways we're metering that data to report all of those different data types. And I've only shown you some of them. We actually have more. There's a lot of different data points because we want to be able to provide you with a well-rounded, let's say a 360 view of what's going on with your licenses, not only to manage the day-to-day operations, understanding denials. We didn't even have time for that today, but also more especially important into going to those vendor negotiations. So good question.
Thank you, Linda. And we have a fourth question here. Does that AutoCAD Power BI dashboard work on any license type?
So that specific template is Autodesk specific, but can you get the same type of information for any vendor? The answer is yes. So again, I showed you various different dashboards, and again, different vendors have different ways to the data and different types of information, but you can get the equivalent information. We refer to it as a data type, if you will. Who's using it, how long. You can even see what's their host ID, all of that type of information. The answer is absolutely. We can do that for other vendors as well. It won't be that exact template. It'll be a different Power BI template that's done. And then you can reverse engineer these as well. So we have a lot of customers. We provide a couple of our standard templates out of the box, if you will. And then you can some customers have us personalize them for what they need in their environment, or you can do it yourself. Some of them but you're not starting from scratch, right? Because you're like, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what the data types are. So we help everybody with that.
Great. Thank you, Linda, for sharing your insights and answering those questions. But before we end this webinar, are there any parting words you have for our viewers?
I would just say for those of you who are not metering, if you're doing things, you got to log into every server to see what's going on. You don't really have a solution to look at your data, your consumption holistically. I highly recommend you look at one and you do it, sooner than later, because it really, all of our customers, they, they say, I had no idea, right, on some of that information. So it's really important. For those of you who have a tool, I would say just, think about beyond the historical types of things we looked at. There's a lot of information that you need to make those well-rounded decisions. But at the end of the day, the very most important thing is start now, right? So if you don't have those insights, the most important thing you can do is start today. Start metering something today, so that when you go to that next contract negotiation, you can, really have a much more informed decision-making process and hopefully cost savings. But it's not always about bottom line. It might be an increase in productivity. Maybe you are licensed too tight. Maybe you've had, budget constraints, etc., and you weren't able to get new budget. But with this type of information, you can now justify why you need additional licenses. So it's not always about bottom line, but I'll tell you, There is a lot of over licensing. There's a lot of licensing that companies are paying for that they have no usage. So stop paying for what you don't need, but get the data so you can have be able to make informed decisions. Start today would be my thoughts.
Thank you so much, Linda. That was really enriching. And also thank you to all our attendees for joining our webinar today. A quick reminder again that this webinar is recorded and you can immediately replay this after the live stream, but we will also upload it on our website. We have 2 new blogs related to the topic of this webinar that you can read, and these are creating customizable reports with License Analyzer and Power BI and Tableau, and from data to decision, leveraging historical usage with Power BI Tableau integration. We appreciate your attendance at this webinar. For any questions or inquiries, you may send us an email at webinars@openit.com. Please visit our website at openit.com and follow OpenIT Inc. on social media. Connect with one of our solutions consultants and get started with your software optimization journey. Once again, this is May, your host for today. Thank you and stay safe.
Thank you, everybody.